Hi, Janine Helton here. I am going to demonstrate the beginning of a mini portrait. Here are the brushes I use and the paints, and I've labeled it for you. You can screenshot it and then you'll have it. I'm using a photo by Mikey Campbell on Unsplash, and I've cropped it real close. I've lightened the shadows, and then I have removed the color and gone in and posterized it so it's down to 4 values or so. And that's just really helpful, especially if you're starting out with portraits. It'll help you to see the value changes and the shadows and things like that. So here's my drawing, and let's get started. So I've already mixed up my watery puddles. Usually I use a triad. Today I decided to use both blue and green, just how I was feeling, I guess. So the yellow is quinacridone gold. The peachy color is quinacridone coral. I've got peacock blue and hooker's green. So I did draw a little more heavily than I normally would just so you could see it. So I'm just using my kneaded eraser to pick up some of the excess graphite. Because this is such a small piece, it's just a 5 by 5. I'm using my number 12 Kolinsky stable to start with the first layer of flesh. On a larger piece, I would use a larger brush. But basically, I start outside of the face and I just start letting the colors mix on the paper. So I do clean my brush between colors usually. I kind of like to have the blue go across the eyes. So I usually do that, lifting up a little bit of the neutralized bead to keep it fresh. And then I moved into the coral and back to the quinacridone gold. And as I'm looking back on this, I'm seeing I sort of did stripes on his face. I probably not ideal, but it's just the first layer, and I'm just really thinking about variety. I'm going across the teeth because they're in the shadow, so they are not white. I usually try to avoid yellow over the teeth. I usually go with the red or the blue. So I'm just kind of bringing it all the way down, and then I'm going to want to absorb any extra bead at the bottom so it doesn't create a bloom into the flesh. Okay, so the purpose of the variety in this first layer is because some areas of this flesh will not be touched again, and it'll just make it more interesting than if it was a solid color. So I'm now mixing up some Scarlet Lake with a bit of ultramarine blue to cool it down. And it's quite a bit thicker than those first puddles. That first layer was about 10% value. So this has quite a bit less water. And I'm wanting to establish the features. So I'm starting with the eyelid crease here. And basically I just mixed up a warm. You can see how warm it is in the palette, even though on the paper it's going to look black. I would never use black. I just want something in the mid-value range for now. I can always darken it later. It's going to look a lot darker now than it will later. In fact, later on, I'll probably have to darken it. I'm never, I don't ever finish anything in one layer. So right now, just again, establishing those eyelid creases and softening an edge here or there so it doesn't look too perfect. Sometimes I'll just skip a little area and either leave it or I might pop in a green or a blue. Right here I'm just kind of connecting it with water. I'm using two different brushes. I'm using my number 8 Klinsky as well as my 12, and I usually keep one clean and damp so that I can do those tickling the edges and such, while the other one is going into the pigment. Excuse me. So the nostrils, the angle of his face, you don't really see the nostrils much, but they are indicated. So I put my color down where there's a hard edge at the top, and then I just tickle the bottom edge to soften it out. And this is not my I don't always use the same mix. I've been starting to use more Quin Magenta. I've also recently discovered Perling Violet. So I might sometimes mix those colors in with the Scarlet Lake or such to get some of these darks established in the beginning. So I want to be very careful painting around the teeth. Uh, the most important thing is to get the bottom edge of the top teeth correct. He's young, but I still don't want to have like sharp lines between his teeth. So the main thing is just kind of that shape of the bottom edge of his teeth, and we're going to kind of suggest the lower teeth as well since they're showing pretty prominently, but I'm going to keep them muted down pretty well. So you see there was a bigger gap there. So I needed to get that right so that I would get the likeness of this little guy. I believe I'm using my, gosh, yeah, that must be my number 6 Galinsky Sable. You can use any kind of brush. You can use a synthetic if you need to for this. Whatever you've got that you can get some good detail in with. So I'm really just looking carefully at the reference photo, looking for the darkest areas. Remember, you've got the posterized version. If that's helpful to you, use it. I'm starting to get some of these shadow shapes in around the nose. I wanted to add a little blue in there, so I grabbed the indigo on accident, but it was the ultramarine blue that I wanted. So that's what I'm doing here, and just kind of, I try to use a variety of color in every layer and every area. And cooler colors are going to read darker as well. So since I've got ultramarine on my brush, I'm just starting to establish the the eyebrows. Sometimes I start really light. I usually don't go real dark right away because I just want to establish the shapes. I'm not trying to finish anything in one go. Everything will take layers. Getting some blue to cool down the teeth. I don't think I used any masking fluid on this piece. Sometimes I might put a little dot for the sparkle in the eye, or if there's a sparkle on the tooth or something, but I can always lift it. But if I ever want it pure white, I might use that dot of masking. But again, his teeth are in the shade, so they're not going to be pure white. Just using the colors on my palette, pulled out a little orange there to start, or to continue with the shadow shapes. Quinburnt orange with ultramarine blue makes a nice black or dark brown. So that's what I'm using to start the eyelashes. And here too, it's just a layer. They're going to get darker later, but I just want to get them started. Notice how I've made sort of a little wedge shape with my Kolinsky sable so that I can uh, make some nice straight, narrow lines, as well as using the end of the brush to pull out an eyelash here or there. Again, here I'm just suggesting. I don't want anything really dark or hard. I want his eyelashes to look natural. And again, I can darken them later, and I will. So I'm going around a little highlight there. I'm kind of getting that started. I jumped down to my tiny one or two Kolinsky to get some of these little eyelashes in. Not really necessary, but I'm looking really carefully. That's one of the reasons I lighten the shadows, is so I can really see what's going on in those dark areas. I'm starting the pupil. And it looks like that's what I did on the other side too, the pupil and the highlight. Putting in a little bit more Quinburnt orange to make more of a brown to paint his irises. I always like to throw in a different color instead of having it all brown or all blue or whatever color the eyes are. So I've thrown some green in here. And as I've said before, uh, it's it's just a layer. I'm going to be adding a few more layers of color. So they won't end up green, but it will give them an interesting texture, I guess. Notice also that after I rinse my water or my brush, I'm looking at the water. So I always have two water containers. You can see the dirty one in the your image here, but the red cup has clean water in it. So I'm usually rinsing in one and then getting the clean water, and then I take my brush and dab it like that, or on the big sponge to get the excess water out, so that I'm not adding water to my palette or, you know, ending up with watery paint. So now I'm going in a little stronger, getting the pupils in, getting more eyelashes, still kind of tickling it around with that tiny brush. I never do anything the same twice, so I hardly ever use that little brush. So I'm back to my 12, and I'm going to take that brownish black mixture, again taking the excess water out of it to make it stronger. And his hair is black, so this is really leaning toward the black. So again, it's the ultramarine blue with the Quinburnt orange. Still not going, to the final color, just getting started here. This eyebrow is in the light, so it's not going to be as probably thick as the shadow side. The shadow side is going to look darker because it's in the shadow. And making sure, the direction of my line is accurate with the direction of his eyebrows in the photo. And now I'm just taking some orange and connecting it to that eyebrow. to the inside corner of the eye. I think that was orange. Might have had a little yellow in it. Getting some of these shadow shapes. To me, the best reference photos have some really good, strong lighting, natural lighting preferably, and some of these interesting little shadows that are cast from eyelashes or flyaway hairs. Again, starting very light, I can always darken it later. The orange is random. I could just as easily have done this with blue or green. I don't plan out my colors in advance. I don't plan out much of anything besides the value. And even then I might change. But I want to, especially on children, keep the shadows from the bags under the eyes very light so they don't look like they have bags under their eyes. But pulling out the little eyelash shadow shapes. I'm sure you figured out that this is sped up. Gosh, it might be sped up 3 times. I'm very slow. I'm a very slow painter. So, and so slow that I'm able to go over, I'm going over that area now for the 3rd time. One thing, it's dry in my studio, but for another, it's had time to dry because this is taking me so long to paint. So if you need to, before you go back into an area, make sure it's bone dry. If you have to use a hair dryer, go ahead and do it, or else just take a break, which is what I usually do. I rarely use a hair dryer, especially on a portrait. I just like to let them dry themselves and see what happens. I'm just tickling some areas with damp brush where it kind of got out of the lines. So connecting that shadow shape with the upper lip. I'd say normally on any piece, large or small, my first layer takes me about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I like to stop and admire it because the first layer is always my favorite. It's like, oh, I don't want to paint on it now. I like it. I don't want to wreck it. But it is my favorite part. It's still fresh, and normally I haven't ruined it yet. Pulling out some peacock blue. Decided I needed to switch up some color on his face. It's pretty watery. Now, if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Then you won't ever miss when I post another video. I'm sort of on a little bit of a roll here. I haven't really been doing videos, but got the old camera out and I'm kind of experimenting here. So hopefully you're getting something out of these videos that's helpful to you. Remember, I do have a newsletter. I put out a newsletter twice a month. I don't want to miss what I'm doing here. I just took a little bit of the peacock with a little bit of the orange and made it kind of a gray, and to tone down the whites of the eyes. Anyway, Sometimes, depending on the topic, my newsletter turns into a blog. So if you prefer to read the content that way, you can do that. But I'm always happy to hear from you if you have questions. Just go to my website, www.janheltonartworks.com, and you can check out everything there. I just put a little bit of yellow on his nose there, add a little warmth to his nostril. Sometimes, as you can see in the reference photo, it is lighter there. So sometimes I might just use a lighter color. So a yellow never gets to a very high value. So it's a good color to put in places that you want to read as very warm or very light. Playing around with the greens. Finally got that green in here. I guess I got it in his eyes, but I'm just continuing to work on these shapes, softening the soft edges, leaving the hard edges where it's a cast shadow, and trying to keep it soft on the form shadows. That Winter Yellow Deep is one of my favorites. It's definitely my favorite yellow. So again, I'm just popping it in, playing around, combining with blue, looking at shapes. And this is kind of, I can tell it's the end of my first layer because I'm starting to play with color a little bit more. I want to make sure I do that on the first layer because if I don't, I may be too intimidated to do it on the second layer. So if I come back to a piece and it's already got some fun splotches of color here and there, it's easier for me to be, intuitive and brave. So reinforcing the brown in his eyes. You probably were wondering why I started with blue on his hair way back when, and I often do that. Just start with a random color because I'm just thinking value. Now here I took a nice dark, I took that red mixture and sort of just establishing the darkest areas, just the underneath his upper lip and maybe a little more between his teeth. Yeah, darkening it a little. Don't let teeth intimidate you. Don't let faces intimidate you because really it's just shapes. You get the shapes right, and it's going to read. I threw a little blue in there to darken it. Again, the shape of the teeth is so important. The corners of the mouth too it's real important to get those nice and dark. And just remember, even on a color photo, these areas, the nostrils, the insides of the mouth, they might look black on the photo, but you've got to remember that photos lie, and you've got to think about what is in there. So what is inside the mouth? Flesh. What's inside the nose? Flesh. So you want to keep it warm. Again, looking at the values and just darkening some areas. kind of like to have this sort of like a roadmap, the first layer. And now you can see it. I've scanned it so you can see the accurate color. And that's where I'm at. Thanks for watching. Happy painting.